All right. Hello, Urban Faith. We're so glad again to be here with you all. And I am excited. I have this wonderful book, The Anti-Greed Gospel, by one of my good friends and colleagues, Dr. Malcolm Foley. This is a really the beginning of a masterwork. I've known Dr. Foley for a long time and know his work and his faithfulness. And so I'm so glad to be with you here today, Dr. Foley. Malcolm, it's good to
Thank you,
see you.
Alan.
You're no stranger to urban faith. You've written for us before. I'm glad to be able to share with you today.
It's good to be with you, Alan.
Absolutely. And so the first question I have for you, I mean, this subtitle, right,
Hmm.
it kind of lays it out. Why the love of money is the root of racism and how the church
Hmm.
can create a new way forward. Can you talk about how is the love of money the root of racism?
Hmm.
This is not a thing that many people are talking about.
Which is and it's so interesting to me that people haven't that's not a popular it's not that's not a popular account. So I thank the Brazos marketing people for giving me that subtitle because it very easily explains kind of what the book is about. So the argument of the book um is that the history of race and racism is not a history fundamentally of identity or of hate or of ignorance, but that it's a history of greed. That when the Portuguese come to Africa, witness chattel slavery, decide to get involved, they don't do so because they're racist. They do so because they have markets they want to expand.
Mm.
And then as time goes on, and they have to justify that to themselves and to the Pope. That's when these narratives of blackness and whiteness pop up.
Mm.
It's these people are savages and heathens, and so that's why we enslave them. It's not because we're going to make a whole bunch of money. Disregard that detail. It's because of something about them. Um, the argument that I want to make in the book is that, like I said, especially this country's history of race and racism is actually just a proxy battle of a cosmic war. And
Mm.
the combatants in that cosmic war were named by Christ in Matthew 6:24, where he says, you can't serve two masters. You'll either love one and hate the other, or be devoted to one and despise the other. And you can't serve both God and Jesus could have chosen any of the numerous idols that we're tempted to serve. I spent a lot of time in reform circles. There's a lot of talk about pride. I'll talk about self. Could have said God and self. Not what he says God and mammon, the Aramaic word for money and riches. Um,
Mm.
and I think Jesus was right 2,000 years ago. I think he's still right today.
Yeah.
And this history is, I think, just a series of examples that back that up.
I love that. And I think that again, you're getting at something as you continue to work that not only does Christ lift it up, but one of the lines that you say really catches me, which is that Christ says that we have to love one another and that
Yes,
love is about obedience
yes,
and that love must be material, right? I can't
yes,
just have an attitude
yes,
of loving. I have to do something. Can you
yes,
talk a little bit more about what that means for
yes,
believers to love materially and not just an attitude as we confront
yes,
racism and greed?
yes, yes. Okay, so my account of what kind of, especially how the New Testament defines love in many ways comes back to First John 3:16, where we're told this is how we know what love is, that Jesus Christ laid down his life for us. Therefore, we ought to lay down our lives for one another. And then in the next verse, John says, if if anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need and has no pity on them, how can you say that the love of God is in you?
Mm-hmm.
And what those verses then indicate is that love is always a material, like it's always a material relation. So like people can think about, this is how we know what love is, that Jesus Christ laid down his life for us. And people can just think about that as just this like lofty theological thing. And that's not what John's saying. John's saying that like Jesus did this very, very material thing for you. He died. Like that's a very serious material act to do on behalf of someone. And so then that has a bearing on the way that you love on the way that you love your neighbor.
Hmm.
They said, therefore, we ought to give up our lives for one another. What it is it's a recognition that everything that we have been given, especially in excess of what we need, is 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 for the is for the service of others. And what that means, especially in our conversations about race, is that we don't address massive economic injustice through just like friendship and hanging out.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep.
We deal with it. We deal with it through redistribution. We deal with it through sharing. Like, but all these material acts that extend beyond just me being able to say, well, I have a bunch of multiracial friendships and we hang out and think well of each other. It's like, well, that's nice, but but that's not love according to the scriptures.
Ooh.
And so yeah, so one of the things I also want to do about with our conversations about race is I want to make sure that they're deeply material. Because the issue with race, and this is what I argue in the introduction, the issue is that it lies, it steals, and it kills.
Mm.
And so if we're going to build communities that resist those lies, that theft, and that murder, it's going to require communities that are shaped in certain material ways, material forms of solidarity, material ways that we resist, not only resist violence, but actively undermine the violence that our brothers, sisters, and neighbors are subjected to, and that we like vocally tell the truth, as opposed to being uh, captive to lies.
So since you raised how we want to be able to be truth tellers in this world that
Mm-hmm.
now is filled with lies, and you make this really, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
just really salient and graphic case about what racism history has been like in this country, and it's tied to
Yeah.
economics. I I want you to tease out just for me how you see moving from slavery to
Mm-hmm.
lynching
Mm-hmm.
to what we're seeing today with mass incarceration, and even this
Mm-hmm.
other this othering, right? This
Mm-hmm.
violence that we're seeing rising in our country, um, that has economic motivators, right? Can you
Yep.
talk about how it's important to not miss that there's a profit motive or a greed motive instead
Yeah.
of just a, oh, I don't like these people, I hate these people,
Yeah.
that's underlying some of this.
It's important to understand that I think when we look at the history of race, we are also looking at the history of capitalism. Hence why I use the language of racial capitalism, which I take from the Black radical tradition.
Yeah.
Folks like Cedric Robinson and others who are very clear that the
Yep.
only capitalism that we know is a racial capitalism. That the capitalism that we know requires us to place people in categories of exploitable thing so that we can make money off of them.
Mm.
So that history of slavery, of lynching, of mass incarceration, each of these are just instantiations of racial capitalism. Slavery is fundamentally a system of economic exploitation. Lynching, as I argue in the book, was precipitated by greed. It continued because of greed, and it ended when it became bad for business. When we think about mass incarceration, we can even think about this right now with the billions of dollars that's now going to detention centers and things
Yep.
like that.
Yep.
Like the reason why these things continue is because they make money for folks. Like, it's not just because you just got a whole bunch of just hateful people that just want to hurt people, and there is cruelty, but even that cruelty is rarely done just for the sake of cruelty. It has some kind of material benefit for someone. That's what then motivates them to continue to do it.
Yeah.
So I want to continue to remind people of that fact, because I've gotten this kind of in some responses from the book, that a lot of people have been like, they look at the history of race and they're confused because they're like, wait a minute, this really just comes down to people not liking other people because they're different. Like, that just seems weird. Like, it doesn't seem like that's a foundation strong enough to like have this continue for so long and with such
Mm.
brutality.
Yep.
But but when they're made aware of the fact that it's like, oh wait, money is behind it, all of the like all the gears, all the dominoes start to fall, and the gears start kind of clicking in place. That's what that discovery did for me, and that's why I wanted to write this book, because I wanted to make sure, because as much as these conversations have been had in academic circles, the church broadly is doesn't doesn't see this, and
Yeah.
so I'm like, let me write a book so that people can see the way that this actually works, but not only so that they can see the way this actually works, but that they could see the fact that Christ has actually given us the resources to be able to live in an alternative way. That we have an opportunity to show the world that this is not the only way. It's not the only way to operate.
Yeah. And turning to that, you offer your own sense of what we're being invited into as believers, like what Christ is calling us into as an alternative, right?
Yep.
As a manifest, I don't know if manifestation is the word, but a witness to the kingdom of God. And
Yep.
you spend some time talking about that. And one of the particular things that people may have heard but not understood or caught is the idea of philanthropy. And you
Mm-hmm.
talk about redemptive philanthropy that's not just like generosity, but it's like
Yeah.
divine philanthropy. Can you talk a little bit about what
Yeah.
you mean by that and how it
Yeah.
addresses this?
So generally, when we think about philanthropy, we think about the kind of Carnegie, Rockefeller billionaires just kind of giving lots of money to causes that they value or whatever. Um, and that can also be the way that we think. That can also just be the way that we think about generosity. The issue with that, though, is that generosity of that kind can very easily just be driven by by paternalism,
Mm-hmm.
that I may be giving this money, but in giving this money, I'm also exerting power. I'm also exerting power over
Yeah.
you. It's my way of affirming my own superiority over you. And in many ways, just continuing to reify that superiority. That's how generosity can function. For Christians, I want to reorient us around divine philanthropy. That is the way that Christ has shown. The word philanthropy just means love of humanity. The way that Christ showed his love of humanity, which was by taking on flesh and actually becoming one of us in solidarity with us,
Mm.
living a fully human life in order to share everything that he has with us. So it wasn't just a declaration of his own superiority. It was a, I want to bring you to where I am. And so in order to do that, I'm going to become one of you and
Yeah.
pull you up with me. So if that is then the paradigm, um, the paradigm that the Christian community is to build itself off of, that gives us a different account of generosity, of giving, and of solidarity, especially with the poor. It's not a okay, well, I'll go to this space for just kind of a moment to be affirmed of my own, like I said, superiority, and then leave. No, no, no. Like, what does it mean for me to walk alongside folks in need? And what does it mean for me to recognize, hey, I may have things that you need, but you also have things that I need in order to grow in Christ likeness.
Yeah.
That equality is not just a static position, but it's a constant relationship of exchange, which
Mm.
is which is what Paul's talking about in 2 Corinthians 8 with the Macedonians and the Corinthians, where he says, my goal is not that you be hard pressed while they're relieved, but my goal is equality. Your plenty will meet their needs, so that in turn their plenty will meet your need. Because there's a recognition, we have things that you need, you have things that we need. So equality is that sharing. That is a different account of philanthropy than just hey, I've got a lot, let me give to you and then move on with my life.
Yeah. And one of the other things that you invite us into that I think more and more Black folks are aware of and trying to lean into, and is like a thing in the world, is like
Mm-hmm.
that we can have socialism in systems that's
Mm-hmm.
not like Marxism, and you spend some time
Mm-hmm.
talking about that.
Yeah.
But can you give me some examples or some ways to think about
Sure.
communal economics that
Yeah.
also are compatible with the historic church or with the gospel?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people just they think, oh, socialism, like that's bad, that's Marx, they're
Yeah.
anti-Christian or whatever.
Yeah.
That's like not a good account at all.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's also, I mean, it's also not an accurate representation of Marx to a certain extent. But my thing is like, I don't get because I will tell people I'm a Christian socialist, but I don't get it from Marx. I I love his critique of capitalism, but as I say in the book, like the purpose of the book is not to tell the government to operate in a particular way. I do say that there are two things that the government's supposed to do. The government's supposed to restrict the most exploitative arms of capitalism and offer a social safety net, kind of a floor under which people can't fall. Like
Mm,
that's something that that's something that an institution like the government only an institution like the government can do something like that. But my primary call is just to the church to do what the church is supposed to do. And that is indicated both in Deuteronomy 15, but also in Acts 2. So after the Spirit of God descends on the people, they're marked by four things: devotion to the apostles' teaching, prayer, breaking of bread, and the fellowship or sharing. And the question is, well, what are they sharing? They're sharing their material goods, stuff that we're told in Acts 4 that God's grace was so powerfully at work among them that there were no needy people in their midst.
mm,
Like that's the material manifestation of God's grace. It's a people of sharing, which
mm,
is which is also just to say that one of the most significant witnesses of the church is its economic witness.
mm,
And the fact of the matter is, I mean, in historically Black churches, um, to see the systems of mutual aid and 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 stuff that pop up, especially in the Reconstruction era and following, like all of that is just like that's basic Christianity,
mm,
which is one of the things that I want to press in the three points of application that I offer in the second half of the book, the economic solidarity, creative anti-violence, prophetic truth telling. Like none of those things are extra Christian things that there's like if you get around to it,
mm,
get around to it. No, like this is actually basic to the way that a community bound together by the Holy Spirit operates. Like
mm.
it's not optional. This is just the
Love that.
way this is the way that the people of God are described. So I'm like, if you want to be the people of God, then you've got to orient yourself practically around these things.
And I it's so true, and I've gotten to see a lot more lifting up of Christian socialism, and I love you bringing it up in the Black church, the mutual aid, right, the shared education, the
Yeah,
that we're going to make sure that we advocate together, that we're going to make sure that we
yeah,
meet needs, right? If you're hungry, you come to the church and you get fed. uh
yeah,
I love you lifting that up. Can you share some more about models that you might have seen, cooperative, church based, or
yeah,
otherwise, that kind of embody the anti-greed gospel as you would see it as an
yeah.
economic reality?
Yeah, and there are some communities that are doing it that are doing it well, but one of the things it's actually interesting because one of the reasons why I don't put a bunch of specific community examples in the book is because it's very easy for our hope to be bound up in those particular communities. So the fact that we've seen it done well in this other space, we're like, oh, that's how I know it can happen. No, like, and then what I want to say in the book is, no, Christian, like you know it can happen because Christ told you to do it. Like that's where your hope is. Your hope is in the
Wow.
fact that your hope is in the fact that Christ died and got from the dead, and he told you to live in this way. And if he told you to live in this way, then he also gave you the resources to be able to live in this way. And so, and so the way that that looks in your community is gonna be a little different from the way that it looks in mine. So, for example, being in Waco, um, not only are not only is the poverty rate high, but I mean, I think about the two kind of categories that I primarily think of are housing and food. You have these two
Mhm.
things that people really need, and yet there are systems in place that keep these things from these people. So
Mhm.
what is it? So what does it mean for us as a community to be committed to the fact that, hey, actually we think that everybody should have this? What does it mean for us to not only live in that way but advocate for that to be the case for everyone? In the city that you may find yourself in, those questions may be different, but but the commitment has to remain the same. That I'm committed to everybody having what they need. This goes back to the kind of socialism versus capitalism thing. Um, I'm not content. I'm not content with a system that just says, okay, just every person for themselves. If you fail, it's your fault. Like that's
Mm.
that is our political economy.
Yeah.
And people are told that that's an encouragement because of the possibility for riches. And for me, I'm like that's not comfort. Like that's not comforting to
Yeah.
anybody. And it ought not be, because the scriptures tell us that anyone who desires to be rich falls into a trap and a snare and all kinds of temptations that ultimately lead to destruction. Um,
Mhm.
and yet that's what lies at the root of our current economy. And so one of the things that I want to encourage at least a number of Christian communities to do is to think about, hey, like what does it mean for you to flee from greed? What does it mean for you to really internalize the fact that godliness with contentment is great gain? And what does it mean for you to also internalize the fact that, hey, if I see something as a need, I've got to live as though everybody should have that thing. And
Yeah.
then and live accordingly. Um, so yeah, so like I'm encouraged to see folks take up that torch in various different ways, but it's going to be dependent on local context. Um, it's going to require, and this is why I pressed at the end of the book, it's going to require spirit fueled creativity, because the obstacles are going to be different in different places, and the resources that'll be kind of available to you may be different in different spaces too, but the commitment has to remain the same.
I know and love that you are always lifting up the Holy Spirit as an important part of our identity as
Yes.
believers, right? We can't just
Hmm.
it's because we decided to, right? This is God's spirit at work within us. And I think that's important. I one of the questions that I have is if you're giving wisdom or sharing advice for leaders, especially in Black churches and African
Hmm.
churches, uh, who are trying to lead, right, in a world where we've
Yeah.
basically been taught like prosperity gospel is big, right?
Yeah.
Capitalism,
Yeah.
Christianity, like that's the only way.
Mm.
Get more
Hmm.
so that you can share more. You
Hmm.
out specifically. What wisdom would you give to people who are trying to live more faithfully, right, in
Yeah.
this anti-greed way? What would you tell those leaders?
There are 2 points. There are two elements of an ethos that need to be built in every Christian community. First, the willingness to ask for help.
Mm,
Second, the willingness to share. One, the willingness to ask for help is you necessarily building humility into your community, because the fact of the matter is that we are pressed on a regular basis to always think through the lens of self-sufficiency.
mm,
That what I'm going for is I want to build a life where I don't need anybody else.
mm,
And that is fundamentally contrary to who we are as believers. We come together as a people who are in need, not only of the Lord, but also of one another. And people need to be constantly reminded of that.
yeah.
People also need to be reminded of the mind-blowing plenty that the Lord has already lavished upon us in giving us his Holy Spirit,
Mm,
and and in the gifts that he's given us. And that then leads to an understanding, okay, anything I have in excess of what I need is actually not meant to be hoarded and accumulated for myself, but it's actually meant to be shared with those who need it. Those two things together I think offer some of the most practical acts of resistance against Mammon, and the way and that's gonna like I said, this gonna play out in a number of different ways, in a number of specific ways. As people preach through the scriptures, they're gonna find a number of ways that not only pops up but is reiterated. Um, but my encouragement is, if there are two things that you want to build among your people, it's a willingness to ask for help, b a commitment to sharing, because there are all of the creativity that we put into like making more money
Mhm.
is actually creative energy that we ought to be putting into how can I share the things that the Lord is how can I share the things that the Lord has given me to meet the needs of the brothers and sisters in my midst, and my neighbors outside of the particular faith community that I'm a part of too.
Wow. The last question I ask, and I ask it, try to ask it to anyone I can interview, is
Yeah.
if you're talking to young people, young adults,
Yeah.
teenagers who are trying again to be faithful and impactful, especially for me as I read your book and think about your
Yeah.
work in a world where success is making more money, right? Like,
Yes. Yes.
and
Hmm.
making as much as possible and doing it on
Yep.
your own without anyone else.
Yep.
What can you share with them about how to be faithful as they're
Yep.
beginning their journeys to and confronting that world?
So one thing is that Mammon rules through fear. It rules through fear of lack of safety and lack of security.
Mm.
And this is what Jesus is saying in the Sermon on the Mount when he talks about our anxiety and worry, that we spend all this time anxious about what we're going to eat, what we're going to wear, all this kind of stuff. We meet that anxiety and worry with money. We're like, okay, well, if I get enough money, then I'm going to be in a position where I won't need to worry anymore.
Mm.
And especially when you come out of situations of poverty, and you know what that's like. You're like, I never want to go back. So
Yeah.
if I have the opportunity to build, let me build, because I know what it's like to not have. I never want to be in that position again.
Mm.
And that is also a situation that Mammon loves, because it keeps your focus on it. To that, Jesus responds and says, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things, that is all that you need, will be added to you.
Mm.
And one of the things that I tell my church this often, I was like, I just don't think we believe Jesus when he says stuff.
Yeah.
and, I really want us to.
Yeah.
Like I want us to take Jesus seriously. And so I said this when they're college students who are thinking about kind of what job to go for, and things like that. My first point of guidance is to ask, hey, like, who is it that the Lord has called you to love? Go there.
Mm.
Do that, because the most important thing that you can do is be obedient to the Lord.
Mm.
And the fact is, like, the Lord will give you the resources to do that. But that has to be your first and foremost. That has to be your first and foremost priority, because that's the only thing that actually matters. I'm about to preach on Ecclesiastes
Mm.
on Sunday, and it's just Solomon going through all these things that don't matter. And that's what I'm going to tell the congregation. I'm like, all these things don't actually matter.
Mm.
What you're feeling is the fact that, because like death is at your back and chasing you, you're like, what can I hold on to fend this off? And what the Lord is telling us in the scriptures is that one of the main reasons for the incarnation, we're told this in Hebrews, is that Christ's intention was to free those who all their lives were held in slavery to the fear of death. Like, that's why the Son of God took on flesh.
Mm.
And because the way that Mammon and death rule is through fear. And that's where that understanding of success comes from, that success is more money and all that kind of stuff. It's because that's my way of alleviating this fear and anxiety that is constantly wells up in me. um I want us to be a people whose fear is quelled by the fact that, by what Christ has done, and what Christ has promised to us. Because it is a to be found in Christ is a deeper safety and security than anything that money can offer. And the more that we can be strident in that message, I think that's an encouragement. That's an encouragement that I would offer to anybody going through those things.
Dr. Foley, Malcolm, my brother, I am so grateful for you. Thank you so much for sharing with Urban Faith and for writing this book. The Anti-Greed Gospel is available everywhere. Go get it if you don't have it.
Get it.
Malcolm.
Thanks, Alan.
Absolutely.